Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In the coming days, the EU will propose new sanctions against Iran after the regime launched over 200 drones and ballistic missiles towards Israel. The EU is looking to expand sanctions imposed on Iran for supplying Russia with drones and missiles to possibly include components. Would you consider, this is for Mr. Noronha, would you consider this a significant consequence given Iran's actions before and after October 7th, 2023?
It entirely depends on the nature of these sanctions. My guess is that no, they will not be very serious. The regime in Iran will not take this as a significant escalation unless they do the UN snapback of sanctions. That is significant. That would impose real costs. Anything short of that is a little window dressing, in my view.
So do you agree with that, Mr. Taleb Blue?
Partially. Here's why. On October 18, 2023, the EU and the UK basically committed their first ever JCPOA violation in plain sight. We have to build on this to bridge the transatlantic gap. The EU retained over 200 missile, military, and nuclear entities that it had promised to give away. And as you know, during the Trump period, the Europeans had no problem drawing a sharp contrast with us and rewarding Iran and chastising us. What we have to do now to work up to the snapback that both Gabe and I want, and both Gabe and I have called for, is a incremental approach. The problem is I would love the snapback, but I know the Europeans, they're probably not going to go for it. So what we have to do is build on what they have retained and share the targeting information of every single missile, military, and nuclear entity that we have sanctioned since leaving the deal in 2018 to bridge that gap and serve as an architecture to get to snapback.
If I may, what glaring gaps exist in the current EU sanctions regime against Iran, and how do these gaps allow Russian aggression and assist their geopolitical goals? Either one of you two.
The big three to me are oil. Europe does not have sanctions on Iran's oil export or their gas exports. Second one, very easy one to do, is banks. That's hard if they're still in the JCPOA to sanction all of Iran's banks. They need to get out of the JCPOA to do so. And then what I would say is airlines, which I mentioned in my testimony, and then finally financial networks. Currently, you can conduct financial transactions within the EU to Iran. Again, that's protected by the JCPOA currently.
So if you, to follow up on that point, how has the continuation of the administration's JCPOA-centered grand strategy towards Iran benefited Russia? And in your opinion, does it provide cover for some EU members, states, to oppose effective sanctions on Iran and their...
So what I've seen from Europeans over several years, over 5 years really, is this posture, which I always hear is, if we take certain action, that will imperil the deal. And therefore, we can't impose punitive measures on Iran for fear of escalation. To me, this is the classic evidence of deterrence. Iran has deterred Europe from taking these actions. Again, if you can get Europe to leave the JCPOA is a figment of everyone's imagination at this point. It has no one's abiding by it except the Europeans. They are now giving unilateral sanctions relief to Iran. Iran is not giving them any nuclear concessions or anything back in return. And I think my colleague Dana might have some comments there.
Yes.
So I would simply observe, number one, we have a diplomatic moment right now. Not only are Europeans, if you go talk to members of European governments, extremely concerned about Iran's creep towards nuclear threshold status and its very alarming steps, and are actually thinking through the steps to get to snapback. You don't wake up one day and do it. There's a lot of preparatory steps. There is an openness to having that conversation with our E3 counterparts at this point in time. Number two is, after this weekend's attack, all of the focus is on Iranian aggression. We have an opportunity to work with Europe, and I would agree with my fellow witnesses earlier that U.S. unilateral sanctions are not nearly as potent or effective as multilateral sanctions coordinated with our European and Asian colleagues. So we should take U.S. interest at this point in time, work with them incrementally to continue to ratchet up those sanctions.
And what is the role of the Lukashenko regime in Belarus in facilitating military cooperation between Iran, Russia, and China? Mr. Noronha.
Iran has used the IRGC trainers in Belarus to launch drones at Ukraine. Iran and Belarus signed a military cooperation agreement back in 2023. They're hoping that Iran will help them supply ammunition as well. So I think of Belarus as sort of the little vassal state of Russia. All the problems that we're seeing in the Russo-Iranian relationship, to a minor degree, are the same ones that we're seeing in Belarus.
Thank you. I yield back my time.